Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with a ban and restricted announcement for January 9th, 2017. This is actually going to lead into a Market Monday video afterwards. I was putting off doing Market Monday just because I didn't want to talk about specific trends and then have them a piece be banned or something like that. So I'll be looking forward to the Market Monday coming shortly after this video. This is a doozy. I am really questioning the ban list here. This one is definitely showing a change in the direction of how Magic or Wizards views banning, especially in Standard, because this is quite awkward. We've seen Standard seasons, I would say, that have been dominated more with like collected company decks and Siege Rhino based decks than I would say Smugglers Copter. So let's just go over the bans before I talk about these individually. So in Standard we have Emrakul the Promised End, Smugglers Copter, Reflector Mage banned. In Modern, we have Gitaxian Probe and Golgari Grave Troll banned. So let's go down them one by one. Let's talk about why they would ban. I mean, they have some explanations here on, and we'll read over those. Haven't really read over those right now. But Emrakul, a lot of us have been calling for Emrakul, myself included, because it was just a poor design. I like banning poor design cards. I think it's the best way to try and regulate Magic the Gathering. See, in like Dota or StarCraft or Hearthstone, or what are some other games that I've played in the past pretty religiously, you can change the programming of a particular character or unit, like in StarCraft, and you can make the changes as the game progresses on. In Magic the Gathering, however, it's a paper card, and you can't do enough testing. There's no way, no how, that the design team can do enough testing to really see major holes with certain cards, because a lot of cards are actually they even are a little too conservative at times, and I think that this opens them up to being less conservative if they can just ban a card. Now, a lot of people don't like bans, and I don't really understand it, because it's necessary for the health of the game to make changes and to spice things up, or just to axe cards that are not working as intended or just a bit too overpowered. If we don't have a ban list, that just means that we're going to see Dimir all over again. I like to say that because in Ravnica, Dimir was such an awful guild compared to the rest of them, because they were so conservative. They were so worried that they were going to make the Dimir mechanics too powerful that instead of just saying, okay, we'll ban it if they are, they just foregoed even creating any decent cards. So Emrakul, I think, was the same thing. They wanted to make sure that it saw play. They didn't know exactly if Delirium would be enough just to push it, and I think that the 7 mana for an Emrakul was just way too easy to achieve, and the effect was just too good, and it was an effect that most people just don't like playing against. So I think that a consensus, most of us agree, this was just bad for Standard, being turn 4 Emrakul. I mean, it was the Aetherworks Marvel that pushed it over the top, but the Black-Green Delirium decks were casting this just fine, and only have to use one copy because Traverse the Ulvenwald was in the format to go tutor it up, and it made for some pretty poor games, with Emrakul taking over the game quite early, as quickly as turn 4. Now let's go on to Smugglers Copter. So again, this is the one card that I'm 100% in agreement with, and I'm glad that it happened. I think it will spice up Standard, even though Aether Revolt was such a powerful. I think that all of these bans might be a little bit too early, because it's very awkward banning cards before a new set comes out, because we don't know how powerful the cards are going to be in the next set. If those strategies are going to overshadow these type of like Marvel decks or like the Copter decks. So let's go on to Smugglers Copter. This one I am not in agreement with. I have talked about I didn't like the design of Smugglers Copter, but I think that once it's in the format and once it's kind of everyone has a playset of this is the one that I find most people will complain the most of, because it required us last season to actually buy into this card, and as you've seen my decks, I've complained about it because it's a card that I even started putting into like Green-Black Fabricate, and even in like Panharmonicon decks, just because it smoothed out the draws so well. That was the biggest thing, and I think the Smugglers Copter, if there was any card that could somehow get a nerf, it should be Smugglers Copter, but they can't nerf it, and that's just sad, because I think this card was particularly good in Madness-based decks. It is going to kill those type of decks. Those decks are going to no longer be playable, like the Red-Black Madness and the Red-Black Zombies archetype. I think it's just done. after Smuggler's Copter is gone. And the thing about Smuggler's Copter, since it is a card that is colorless, it, as far as like power level is concerned, every deck has the option to run it. And in a is that the direction that Wizards is going to go? Because it sets kind of a pretty scary precedent for if a card just becomes powerful enough, then they just axe it. So Smuggler's Copter, I don't know. I'm pretty 50-50 on this one, as I see the reason behind it, that it really is hard to play or justify playing any other 2-drop when Smuggler's Copter exists. I think that this, I'll talk about it more on Market Monday, this really leads it open to cards like the Duskwatch Recruiter and the Sylvan Advocate now become really, really tempting to put in the format. So be looking at those 2 cards particularly for having price increases. And especially since the next ban also really, really hurts those type of cards. So Smuggler's Copter, I'm just sad that this card was a 3/3. I think if they could have nerfed one thing, if it discarded a card after it did draw a card, discard a card after combat damage, or if the discard was first, discard a card, then draw a card, or if it didn't have flying, or if it didn't have, like, there's so many things that they could just nerf one thing with the card and it would have been just fine. But I'm okay with this ban because we'll open things up. Martyr Vehicles gets really, really hurt. I think it was the only vehicle that was justifying why you'd run it. I have a deck that I would have been really fun with SRAM. Would have been the key vehicle to cast with SRAM, the one that draws a card whenever you cast a vehicle, equipment, or aura. And I was really looking forward to playing Smuggler's Copter, but I can just play another card now. I think that banning the card actually hurts some archetypes, but all in all, I think that like all the decks get. It's fair to ban it, just like it's fair to keep it in. So again, I don't care either way with this card, to be honest. So on to the third one, which is Reflector Mage. This card, I've hated this card. I really hate this card, but I don't know if that's enough to justify it being banned. It is very powerful. It stops a lot of cards in their tracks, but it might just be a necessary evil right now. Otherwise, aggro just goes completely bonkers. Especially with a card like Smuggler's Copter out of the way. Yes, it hurts aggro, but yes, it also gives the mid-range decks it takes away a tool to combat. I mean, the best way to beat Smuggler's Copter was a Smuggler's Copter, and so geez, UI Flash gets really, really hurt. I don't think the archetype gets hurt that much, but Reflector Mage just really screwed up Curve, and I think that Spellcaller I think Spellcaller is worse than Reflector Mage. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. They both will rotate the exact same time, so nerfing one piece is probably enough for the U-White Flash. But Reflector Mage is really, really good against the vehicles. Sylvan Advocate and Duskwatch Recruiter, I just want to keep saying those 2 cards just get so much better now with Reflector Mage out of the mix. Now you can safely cast a 2 and a 3-drop without fear of being Reflector Maged and just the tempo just completely gone. So I can understand this. We'll see what they talk about later with this card, why it's gone. But I think that Smuggler's Copter and Reflector Mage, I don't think either one needed to go because they didn't lead to anything, I think, too oppressive. There are plenty of strategies. We saw, I think with Emrakul out of the way, Reflector Mage decks just get completely beat up by the green-black Delirium that didn't need Emrakul anyway. That's my whole point with green-black Delirium. It's still fine without it. You can start playing some other cards in that slot for finishers. It was just such a duh of a finisher, is why I hated it, and lack of removal for it. But Smuggler's Copter, I did mention all that. The Smuggler's Copter makes me shake my head too, because in this set, we get a lot of answers with Aether Volt for Smuggler's Copter. We get a 1-drop in the form of a black spell that will just kill this card and waste an entire turn crewing it. We get some instant speed artifact hate. The biggest problem with Smuggler's Copter is a lot of the premier removal was sorcery speed or 3 converted mana cost. So Murder was 3 converted mana cost. We also had the Appetite was 3 converted mana cost. Natural State didn't kill both. Wasn't the Fragmentize was also sorcery speed. Incendiary Flow was sorcery speed. Fiery Temper was 3 mana. You couldn't rely on the Madness to kill Smuggler's Copter on time. And that was the biggest problem with Smuggler's Copter was the sorcery. Did I say Incendiary Flow, Declaration in Stone? What are some other ones? So it just made Stasis Snare the premier removal but it's still 3 converted mana cost. There's very few ways aside from Grasp of Darkness that could take care of Smugglers Copter. Harness Lightning and Grasp of Darkness. Those are the two cards that really could take care of it. And so it was more lack of answers than the sheer power level of the card. Do answers mean that people would stop playing the deck and it would just be a plague like every deck infested with Smugglers Copters? Maybe so. So again, I don't know how I feel about this card being gone. Reflector Mage, though, Green-Black Delirium, I think is a very easy way to destroy these Reflector Mage U-White Flash type decks, and we also see a ton of sheer power level with like even green-white humans becoming a lot better, so maybe we'll have a human strategy that can go toe-to-toe with Reflector Mage. Banning these two pre-set released, I think, was a mistake. I think that looking back on it, maybe after the Pro Tour and banning them, I think they really want to shake up the Pro Tour, which I don't know. I think that's a poor excuse for banning cards. All right, so that was a long-winded rant about it. Modern. Gitaxian Probe is banned. I think it's the wrong card to ban. I like it because it does a little bit neuter Infect. Infect especially, or the Death Shadows. Gitaxian Probe was letting them play a 56-card deck, meaning they could skimp out on a land, which also mean that Become Immense was a lot easier to cast in both of those strategies, and it gave them information to know if they could just attack in for lethal. So now we have to play more of a reactionary Magic without having that first turn information of what our opponent has. I was probably the first one to hate this card. In fact, I got a lot of people making fun of me in an old video saying that I wanted Gitaxian Probe banned, and they thought I was stupid because it was such a weak card, blah, 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 blah. Well, now it's banned. This really hurts Storm, too. If Storm ever had the chance of coming back, I think it's now pretty much dead. Because that was a pretty pivotal piece with it. I still think that there are a few other cards in these type of archetypes. Simian Spirit Guide should have been banned. The card is absolute cancer on the format, and I don't know why they continue to allow Simian Spirit Guide reign in Modern when it leads to so many degenerate things. That would have been my first pick for a banned card, but Gitaxian Probe is fine because it does help against a lot of these type of strategies that I think are a little too consistent and a little too good for the format. Golgari Grave Troll. Golgari Grave Troll, I'm pretty much 50-50 on this as well. I think we all think that Dredge needed a card nerfed, and Golgari Grave Troll does not kill the Dredge. I think they're still fine with Stinkweed Imp, and the I think the next best one would be the 4 Dredge, the one that Golgari... Why can't I think of the card that puts a card back on top of your library when it dies? So I think there's still a lot of Dredge. You have a Dredge 5 now that Stinkweed Imp was still a 4 of in most of those strategies, and now a Dredge 4. So basically they nerfed it. Dredge 2 is what they nerfed the Golgari Grave Troll. And yeah, this probably was the right one. I was thinking maybe like Insolent Neonate would have been the right one, because Insolent Neonate really is the culprit for the first turn shenanigans, because it allows you to discard a card then draw, and it just leads to a lot of busted. But it was really Golgari Grave Troll. You can still do that with Stinkweed Imp, so you can still go first turn Neonate, sack it, discard the Stinkweed Imp and Dredge 5, and hopefully hit some prize amalgams and some what are the amoeba, the Narcomoeba. So I think that, yeah, this was a significant nerf. This is effectively Dredge 2 that it's getting out of the deck. So replacing it with some less an inferior Dredger. So that's all right. I think if they would have got rid of like Prize Amalgam, it would have, or the Blood Gas, would have completely killed the archetype. So I'm okay with this ban. Still, I think it might be the wrong one in Dredge. It might not affect Dredge as much as we want, or just lead to a more inconsistent Dredge. And I don't want, like, I've been calling for consistency with Modern for quite a long time. It's one of the reasons why I don't like Simian Spirit Guide. It's because it leads to a lot of deck creations for a lot of high variance decks, like the turn 1 Blood Moons, or the turn 1 Goryo's Vengeance, or a lot of cards that just rely so much on the Simian Spirit Guide. I don't even mind Ad Nauseam so much, because of course if you ban Simian Spirit Guide, Ad Nauseam is completely gone. Ad Nauseam has nothing really to do with the Simian Spirit Guide, why I want it banned. It's all the shenanigans that just really try for these high variants. Let's cheat it a turn earlier. If that's the case, why don't they just reprint Lotus Petal or the Mox, the Chrome Mox, unban that in the Modern format, which I think would be completely terrible for the Modern format. So just skimming over this, the Reflector Mage, so the Smugglers Copter Emrakul Reflector Mage demonstrated imbalance in standard. I agree with that. I think those were the most powerful ones. So 7 dropped, the most powerful card was Emrakul. 2 dropped, the most powerful card was Smugglers Copter. 3 dropped. I think it's tied between the Spellcaller and Reflector Mage. So with both of those together, though, it led to a very powerful curve going 1, 2, 3. So say Emrakul created to be scarily powerful, delivered on that promise too well, faced little resistance, and ended games too easily. Yep, it just was an I win button, and Aetherwork Marvel put it over the top, and Delirium strategies, especially with all the artifacts that we got, or just a lot of the other quick ways to get Delirium, or even greater than Delirium, out of even the Kaladesh format, was too much to push it over the top. Simply put, Smugglers Copter is too efficient and shows up in too many decks to mention the format's diversity. I can agree with that sentence. We want Planeswalker, Sorcery Speed removal, and a variety of vehicles to be a viable option. So they're kind of mirroring what I said. The Sorcery Speed removal was so terrible in a Smugglers Copter environment, and removing Smugglers Copter will allow them to flourish. I'm okay with that. However, I think that we should have waited and seen if the answers to Copter would have been enough. Reflector Mage shows that our data shows that White Blue Flash deck is too powerful against the field. It has been on the most disliked cards since the days of Collected Company. Other cards were discussed to keep White Blue Flash in check. Reflector Mage came up time and time again as both a frustrating and targeted way to diminish the White Blue Flash deck. Alright, that's fine. It does hurt Panharmonicon. Gitaxian Probe increased the number of third-turn kills in a few ways, but particularly by giving perfect information and a card to decks that often have strategic decisions about going all in. I am 100% on board with that. And I think they saying that this is a 56-card deck is also... It was just too easy to... They banned like Ponder and Preordain for similar reasons. It just helped with variance. It really minimized and gave blue just a huge power... level above the other colors just as far as fixing. We are in a game that is very random, and Ponder and Preordain were just too good at fixing for exactly the cards you needed at the exact right time. Probe, anyone could use it in their deck, of course, but it did seem to be particularly good in, speaking of Splinter Twin, possibly like even Splinter Twin type decks could come back, because Gitaxian Probe and Splinter Twin there was some lists that never ran it, and I thought it was a very weird exclusion, because it did give Splinter Twin a game plan to know if there's a path to exile and whatnot. So I mean, there is cards like Gitaxian Probe, but they aren't free for information. So I'm okay. I think this is a great explanation. Golgari Grave Troll, Dredge, the mechanic and the deck has a negative impact on Modern by pushing the format too far towards a battle of sideboards. With the printing of the Cathartic Reunion and Prize Amalgam, this deck was once again unhealthy for the format. While those cards were discussed, the real offender has always been the Dredge mechanic itself. Sure, I'm okay with that, but it was really Prize Amalgam. Golgari Grave Trolls were... it was a joke of a deck. Dredge, you did see Dredge every now and again, but without Amalgam, Amalgam provided that, what we call like staying power or consistency, and also it was the busted draws. So they don't flat out kill it. Is it going to be enough to get rid of Golgari Grave Troll? I think this was it definitely was one of the minor cards that should be banned. I still think it should have been the Neonate, but there are some versions that don't even run it. I don't know. I'm okay with it. So on to this too, so we're making this change to give us, as well as the player community, greater flexibility in keeping organized play healthy and fun. We recognize that the Pro Tour play, which is most directly informed by the announcement timeframe, represents a small fraction of Magic play. The play that is most affected by formats becoming imbalanced is the kind that happens between announcements, like FNMs, Grand Prix, local tournaments, Magic Line events, Pro Tour qualifying tournaments, or even just friends playing at home. So in order to best serve the majority of Magic players, we're adding the mid-set window to ensure play experiences at those myriad events are the best they can be. We do not expect this to lead to an increase in the number of cards banned or restricted, but a greater flexibility will allow us to address play. So banned restricted announcement can be made both on Monday can be made both on the Monday after standard legal set pre-releases and 5 weeks after the Pro Tour. Also on them. Okay, so they're changing when they can do that. That's awesome. Okay, so all in all, let me know in your comments in the comment section below how you feel about this. A lot of people hate banning. The people that just went crazy over certain bannings in the past, like I'm done after pod. Well, the writing was on the wall for some of those decks, and I think that it leads to a healthier format. I am all for more banning and more mixing it up. And people are like, well, then Modern becomes a rotating format, and that's why we play, because it's not a rotating format. Okay, then unban everything, and we can go back to just Blazing Shoal Infect. Like, that entire, to me, that entire verbatim or speak is just stupid. It's just stupid. We need to try to cultivate healthy formats. Is this going to be enough for me to come back to Modern? Probably not. I still want to see more from Wizards than just aggressive bannings. I want to see them fully support it with a tournament. Doesn't have to be a Pro Tour. I suggest doing a Modern middle of the year, summer Modern, huge Pro Tour where you have your own individual qualifiers for it and have pro points actually qualify you for it, and have it maybe every other year. It doesn't even have to be every year. It can coincide with the releasing of Modern Masters. So you can have a huge Legacy tournament with Eternal Masters and then have a huge Modern tournament with the release of Modern Masters. And that's fine. They just need to show me that they're not abandoning the format. And this is a good step, but not enough for me to invest back into Modern. So kudos to them. I still think a card should have been unbanned. I don't know which card that is. I've been talking about Stoneforge Mystic for a long time. I think it'd be very fine in a format like the Kolgan's Command and what's the red-green Destructive Reveille type cards to kind of keep Batterskull in check. A lot of people don't realize that was one of the problems with the format. Is one of the best ways to keep Batterskull in check was the 3-drop, the 2/2 human, when it came into the battlefield, destroy an artifact, and that was just a poor way to do so. So yeah, so I'd like to see a few more unbannings and a few more bannings especially, and a little more involving the community in those talks. Hope you enjoyed this. We'll get to a Market Monday video. This is a long little rant, but I think this is a good, all in all, A+, even with the knee-jerk reaction, I think, with the Smugglers Copter Reflector Mage. So, okay, B+ for this abandoned announcement for January 9th, 2017. Kevin with RoadDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.